Hello and welcome to this BB Education cutting tutorial. Now in today's tutorial we're focused on creating a layered shape with a soft emphasis on front bangs. Now we're utilising practical disconnection to both give a layered soft shape to the face frame but also an overall layer that gives a nice soft tapered feel towards the length. But we start on the top. We start with a delta section running from a low crown position, which is the narrow point, widening as we get towards the recession of the hairline. What's interesting is you'll notice that both these disconnected panels almost interlock. The delta section fits into the back section. This is no accident. It helps to seamlessly blend together two bodies of disconnection with an interlocking feel. So if you are disconnecting, it can sometimes be great to utilize a zigzag section or an irregular shape. So let's start with our elevation, which is moving the hair up and down. This has got a lot to do with the characteristics of our shape. So here I'm pulling it straight from the head, which looks like it's coming slightly forward, but I could pull it straight up. Now, if I pull it forward, it's more impactful. If I want to be less impactful, if the hair's really fine, or if there's a curl pattern I need to consider on the hairline, I may pull it straight up as it's less impactful. But for the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to go straight from the head, working round. So our elevation is parallel to the head shape. Our cutting line is short to long. So at the moment we're just cutting a flat line, but due to the nature of the head shape curving away from the line, we start to accentuate a triangular line. So let's go through that again. The elevation is slightly tiered towards the front, which means it's almost being lowered towards the front. Our cut line is flat, but due to the nature of the head shape, we're building a short to long line. Because our line being flat, it has to travel further as the head curves. So it gives us a long outline. So it's not short, but what it gives us is this outline is very heavily layered. So it falls with a very, very soft veil, making it an interchangeable. I wouldn't really at this point class it a bang because we haven't refined it and it hasn't gone short, but the outline is very soft and tapered. So it gives a quite natural finish to this shape. Whereas with some face frames would be quite heavy and rely more on texturizing. This already has got the characteristics of being very layered. Moving on, we're just going to clip this out the way, keep everything neat and organised, and we're going to come directly to the back section. We're going to start with a central vertical profile section, working from the point of the delta directly to the centre part of the nape. So how do we know which elevation to use? Well, I know the higher I go, the less will affect the length. In fact, the more length drops away, the higher I lift this section. But I also have to be mindful, if elevation is lifted really high, I have to also know that my cut line could start to affect the internal shape more. So we lift it higher, we're going to have a shorter internal, longer external. Right, that's obvious. So we know that there's going to be more weight on the outline of the haircut and less on the inside of the haircut. That's what layers will give us. So if the elevation isn't lifted high, what would happen? Well, if we pull the elevation, let's say on base or even below base, the top's going to be longer than the bottom, and that's going to give us a weight line. So it's also going to make the distribution, our cut line, thin out the length, which we don't want at all. So elevation is one of the key mechanics to building the shape vertical from top to bottom. So as I lift my section, I elevate up, I let some of the length fall away. That's really my guide to know that's the place I'm going to start to cut. And I can cut a short to long. How is this short to long? Well, as the head is rounding away towards the occipital bone of the nape, the hair has to travel further. Again, notice that I'm working short to long, that I'm staying on the same side as the previously cut section. I'm now pulling, whereas the previous one I was pushing the same as the top. Remember, at the top, we worked short to long, same at the back. So we always want to start working from the short first. So this ensures consistency in our total balance of our shape. Once completed, we're going to start the sides. But we're going to begin that by taking the final section we cut at the back as our new guideline. So that's right, the final section we've just cut is going to act as a guideline for the whole of the sides. We worked square horizontal at the back, which meant we went back to previous, but as we know from the zones that the sides have less hair, we've got to do something to compensate for this. So this means that all our subsequent sections will be over-directed back to a stationary guide, switching from a horizontal square into a horizontal triangular shape. Now remember, square builds length slowly and steadily, whereas triangular builds it rapidly. So by switching this from square to triangle, we compensate for the fact that there's less hair at the front than there is at the back. So now we've completed both sides. We can let the hair breathe, we can breathe, and we can just check our work over. I'm going to place my outline in now, but this is optional. I always prefer to cut the length to the strength of the outline. Obviously, I wouldn't do this if the client wanted to keep the length, but for the purpose of the tutorial, I made the decision to strengthen the outline. Now I'm going to, for the first time in the tutorial, I'm going to combine all of our sections as one shape. And you kind of get what I mean now about the bangs. You know, it's not an obvious thing when you see the section sitting down, but when you see it as one all over shape, you start to see what I mean. We have this balance of layers throughout the haircut. If we tried to connect the layer from the back into the front, it would have kept more length at the front, which is what we needed, but it wouldn't have given us the bang. If we just placed the bang at the end, it would have been really, really heavy, and it wouldn't have introduced itself in the soft way it does now. We're going to wrap dry the hair in a very, very simple way to get control of the roots using a ceramic brush for the mid-lengths and the ends. Now our finished look hasn't been texturized yet, but it already looks really soft and quite pretty. Now again, let's just recap. This is what we did. We layered the whole shape through to give a tapered feel to the outline. Okay, we did that. The reason we disconnected the shapes was if we tried to connect it all together and preserve the length at the front, we wouldn't have got the lengths of the bangs how they are. If we just placed the bangs at the end, we would have had a very heavy outline. So let's look at softening and refining and personalizing. The first thing I prefer to do here is take a very small section at the front, a little triangle. Okay, I'm going to focus on texturizing this first. I mean, this is really like the guideline or your baseline. I'm going to start internal with a soft slicing technique. Starting internal is about removing the density. This is the quantity of hair in the section. It's not the weight. Cutting the ends in this way is removing weight. But as you can see, there's no need to remove weight. The ends aren't thick. So it's about creating some fractured texture, giving definition in the lengths. And that comes from the density. So I'm focusing on gently, I must stress this term gently, with not too much tension on my fingers. I'm going to slice. Now working through into the top, we can start to take horizontal sections and we can start to work with our slicing technique. Remember, what will the slicing give us? It'll remove the density. What will the point cutting give us? It'll remove the weight. The density is something that I think describes the amount of hair in one area, and the weight is about the condition of the ends of the hair. So if there's lines or steps, you'd say there's a weight line. Now, the shape's starting to really, really take off. So we're going to work through the back section knowing that the front is pretty much there, and we're going to work with a mixture of slicing and a mixture of point cutting. And then we've got our end result. So to recap, we worked with our delta section and we worked with a disconnecting section for the back, for the masteroid process, into the front. Now the whole point of this was that we created the front effect you can see now, and we also had a layered shape that was consistent throughout. The reason we disconnected was that we couldn't have got both things at the same time. We couldn't have protected the back and give the layer to the front. So we used practical disconnection to give this soft salon wearable shape. This ends today's tutorial. I want to thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you again soon.